All right, we'll go ahead and get started. I want to welcome everyone to today's Insight session. My name is Adam Kurtz, and I'll be guiding you through today's topic, which will be stratum calculations. So we'll be talking about how to perform a calculation within a view. We'll obviously review some of the fundamentals of that. We'll go into some common business calcs, variances, variance percents, profitabilities, profitability margins. We'll take a look at some of that. We'll also take a look at how we can use attributes in calculations as well. So you might have a list price for your products, and you can calculate that against your units to get an extended list price. So some things to do with your attributes. And we'll also look at some of the calculation functions that are available. Some are new and some have been around for a while. So we'll review some of those as well. All right, so that's what we want to discuss today. So we're going to dive right into it. I'm going to go ahead and run a couple of views here, and we'll go into basically just some simple calculations just to get things started. If you have a view out there similar to this, you'll see how you can perform some of these things. We'll do something here really simple. Okay, so here's a simple view. Obviously, we have a this year versus last scenario. Looks like we're looking at a specific day. Doesn't need to be that way. We'll change that to months, and we'll make this year to date. So we'll do that for we'll do that for both. Switch over to months, and we'll get a little more data this way. All right, so here we have year to date, this year versus last. And then we have a variance column. So one thing you can do is very simple. Take this amount of sales minus that amount of sales, which would be what we would call a variance. If we take a look at that, so obviously that calculation has already been built. And if you double click on that header, I'll do it again for you. All you do is come up to the variance column, double click on that, and you'll see the actual formula for the calculation itself, right? Here we can see that it's clearly taking this year versus last and just subtracting last year from it. We can certainly rewrite that. If you guys wanted to see how that's written, basically, if you notice, you've got the calculation window on the right, which allows you to build the calculation. You can even do some commenting by // this is a calculation, and you can explain what you're doing to somebody our user that might come in and take a look at the calculation. So as you can see, you can kind of write some documentation in there and document your steps of the calculation if you want to. Here we can go ahead and on the left side, we get access to the different things that are available within the view. As you can see, there's hierarchies that are available. So these are the hierarchies that we have within this view. We've got product brand, product line, customer sold to. So some things there that we can take advantage of. And then if we open up our measure items, we can see that those are available as well for this year and last year's sales. We know that those are available. So if we place our cursor here below my documentation line, I can go ahead and select the measure that I want to start my calculation off with. And then if I select a dash here or a minus, and then I would select last year's measure. If I validate this, the expression is valid. So as you can see, this will work, right? Up here on the top, we can see that there's a format pull down. So you'll use that to format your data. In this case, we're using a dollar format because, well, actual sales is represented as a dollar, right? So we certainly want the dollar variance here to be represented as dollars as well. So you have that capability. You also can fill if you want to fill that calculated column with something, a different color other than just vanilla white, then you can do that here on the fly as well. Over here on the left is the caption expression. If you want to say variance, have the full word variance or var, up to you. It's as you can see, free form text. So we click OK to that. We get our calculation and we get our variance. I can now sort on that calculation. In descending fashion, we can see the biggest variance between this year and last year's sales would be farm fresh. So clearly a lot of growth. It's something you'd like to see. And if we just click on that sort, we can see that it just, flips it upside down. And now we're doing an ascending sort where we can see areas of not so great growth. I mean, we obviously clearly have some growth, which is great, but yeah, we can work on some of these other brands to get them bolstered up a little bit more. So depending on how you want to do that, sort, and then as you can see, you can always come back into the calculation if you need to refine something or add additional text to the documentation. Pretty simple. Now, if I wanted to add on to that variance, I will simply right click on that column and I will add in another calculated measure. And right away, it brings up the calculation expression window, which then allows me to pursue, in this case, a variance percent. So a couple things I'll do here is I'll use a function to do my division, and then I will use the variance as my numerator. So if I wanted to look at just simply a dividing my variance, and then by clicking on last year's sales, I've just completed the syntax for that division. So in this case, it'll take the variance over last year's sales, which is basically a variance percent. If I validate this, it says good. I will call this a var percent, and I will format it as such. And then I will fill the color in just basically the same, so it kind of melds in with the variance. And there's my variance percent. So across the board, I'm doing 25%. And we can see that's pretty flat. Demo data, kind of boring, but we can see that I can sort this. I can see the top variance percents. So even though Farm Crisp doesn't have quite the volume, they are one of the top, in terms of variance percent, they're one of the top growers that you wouldn't necessarily make that conclusion just by looking at the variance. But the variance percent kind of puts things in perspective for you. So again, that's things as simple as that, where you can go in and do some simple math, right? Do some variances, do the divisions as needed. If I were to change this to, something else like an achievement percent, I can come in, wipe that out and pick another function. For instance, if I were to choose achievement percent, again, division, variance over last year, same thing, right? So you're going to get the same concept because it's the same division, right? This year, your variance over last year's sales. So some of that, is redundant, but yeah, it is what it is. It will get you there in terms of what you want to do. And also does a divide by zero check so that it doesn't do any division over zero denominators, which is nice too. And as I drill, I can drill this to from product brand. For instance, I can go from farm fresh to the product line and on to customer. It might get a little bit more meaningful now here at the customer level, right? So now you got all the customers that are buying this brand. And here we can see that the accounts that are on top in terms of variance percent growth this year versus last. So, again, if we flip that, we can see overall not bad. The lowest customer around 23% variance percent growth. Probably could work on the volumes, but in this case, we can see that the growth is there. So, and speaking of such, the volumes, that's something else that you can do here is some ABC functions as well. So in this case, we can see that, and if we do this, sort this accordingly, I think this needs to be adjusted. I think this is backward, actually. So this is a ABC cumulative to percent based on the sales year-to-date column, or from July through. So here we can kind of play with these numbers to get these segmented out based on ABC accumulation. So you have this capability to do ABC percent of total, cumulative percent of total, or just base it on the total, ABC cumulative total. So you can do also rankings. So you can rank by division and customer sold to. And the rankings, if we take a look at the syntax there, we can see that there's a rank. First of all, we're selecting if it's the thing that the measure that we're based the rank on is actually checked for zeros. And if so, then we'll make it null. Otherwise, this ranking is done. And again, this is a little more advanced where you can go in and do the syntax. This is actually something you can copy in from the help screen. So if you want to go to the help menu, you can come in, select the help menu, and get your online syntax through the help menu. So if I go into online help, I could search for calculations. And as you can see, you can then select your calculation measure items, which is one of the first topics that come in. Here it goes into more detail on these different functions that you can use. And you can copy and paste the syntax because they actually put it in here for you. So you can play around with some of the syntax that's already written for you within the help text. So again, probably a little more advanced on the ranking piece, but it is a nice piece where you can go in and if you wanted to, again, sort this column in descending fashion, then you can kind of see how the rankings occur. The ranking starts over again by subtotal here in this particular report. Um, so yeah, that's more on the ranking time. You can also go in and do some date differences. So if you have a particular date for anything really, as long as it's an attribute for a product or a customer, maybe a customer acquisition date, you can see how long you've had that customer. In this case, this product is my product effective date as an attribute. And we can see here at the product level that I can use that attribute in a calculation. So here we have a difference between today and that product effective date. Um, Again, this is really not necessary. If you're running a fairly decent recent version, I don't believe you need to actually do that check. Well, maybe I was wrong. So I guess we do need to do that. So so for instance, this time calculation, or I'm sorry, the date difference, they are checking to see if the units is zero and then make that null if it is. Otherwise, go ahead and do the date difference um, format or function. So the date difference, as you can see, date diff, open paren, D would be obviously the day unit that you want to tell the function to use. Now is today. So we're saying, tell me the day's number difference between today and that effective date. So as you can see, the effective dates are pretty old, right? 2004. So it's basically been 7,560 days since some of these effective dates. Now, you can do this with expiration dates, which probably would be even more effective, where you can then kind of get a better feel for how old some of your items are uh, in your inventory. You might have situations of where perishable products might exist, like foods. So, this would be a pretty important thing to track, and you can use the date diff to help you track that. And if I go to properties on any one of my columns, I can then put in a conditional format to say, anything really I can make a custom one on the fly to really highlight negatives in red. And say that, hey, if this is negative, I want to know pretty drastically, right? So I'll make this kind of pop accordingly, where in the background color will be red as well, right? So for anything that is negative, we can go ahead and designate that as red. So um, you can do this for any, it's just a simple example, right? So you might have situate, or if it's within a certain time, or that if you want to change that to another threshold, you can do that as well. You can go in and double click back in on that conditional format and say, hey, if this is less than negative, I don't know, pick a threshold, 3,000. Um, maybe that's something that would be something a little bit more appropriate. I don't know if we have anything that's 3,000 though, interestingly enough. Let's see if we can sort this. I think everything's so old that, yeah. So I would have to pick a number between, one of those like 7,300. We'll do something like that. And we'll get some that might not be highlighted. Looks like everything is less than that as well. One last try on that. We'll try 7,500. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be working as the way I wanted to. Dealing with these negative numbers is a little confusing. So as long as you deal with just if something's positive versus negative, then you won't have to deal with that. It just seems like everything wants to just show up as red because it's negative. Um, Using these functions again, you can go in and you can also do counts. This is a nice view where I have my customers available here, and I've got my units sold. I've got a percent of total, so we can get a good feel for some of the bigger accounts that contribute to the total here. We can see Wilder Foods coming in on top there at 23%. So again, percent of total using yet another function, the percent of total for units sold. Again, very simple. Um, and then we've got number of products sold. So for each one of these accounts, we can see that Wilder's purchasing 57 products. In Buffalo, they're purchasing 58. Again, I could sort this in descending fashion, and I could see that Quebec, Calgary, these particular locations are coming up in on top here based on my number of products sold. So how do we calculate that? Um, Well, this is the old way, and I think there's definitely an easier way to do that, and I'll show it to you. We can see that there's a count member function now available, right? So here we could just click on that. We can then go in and select product as our hierarchy, and then we will select sales units sold for the measure. Um, it should be that simple. So we'll validate it. Looks good, and we'll click OK. And we get the same result. So you just saw how, and I'll save that actually, because you just saw how difficult it was before. We come up with some of these these functions, and the amount of syntax is way less than what we saw, prior. So that is the count member. That is actually a newer function that we've um, added so that you can count things. In this case, we're counting the number of products by sales units. And it can be at any level. It doesn't necessarily have to be at ship to level. I can see it at, if I wanted to add another level here, I could see it at sold to, or anything else for that matter. Division. I can aggregate all the way up to division to see by division number of products sold, right? Pretty simple to do. And we can see that in groceries really kind of driving more products than the food service division. And we can kind of drill in on that to see, and there's the sold to. So I'll just drag and drop sold to over there. And we can see that the top sold to is Wilder Foods with coming in at 63, the Eastern division. What are those products? We can drag and drop product over into Wilder Foods, and we can see that all the 63 products that come up. And we can see that there's 64 rows, but that includes the grand total at the bottom. So indeed, there's 63 products. If I go back and maybe just choose some of these intermediate ones like Packingham Foods or Harrington's, we can see there's 31 products. And again, there's 32 rows. And again, that includes the grand total. So that, as you can see, it works. It's very accurate in terms of, doing the counts as needed. And yeah, I mean, it makes it really simple in terms of doing these counts. So that's the sold to count or the count member. And you can base that. In this case, we're doing it on product, but you can do it on number of customers that you have. You know, it, it's really unlimited in terms of what you can do, as long as you have the levels within the view that you want to use for the count. That the level needs to be within the view in order to make that part of the calculation. Um, Also wanted to show ability to add in an attribute. So if we wanted to, for instance, for product, I'm going to add in product as a level, and we'll make that our first row. And here we can see a couple things that we could use, although I'm going to add in another attribute for list price. And we're going to use list price as within our calculation. So there's our list price for each item that we see here. And then I'm going to add in another calculation to do some math against that list price attribute. So I'm just expanding these so I can get access to the list price. And I'm going to, use that, and I'm going to multiply that against oh, we need some units, but let's do that first. So let's change these to units. So I'll change those columns from the sales amount to units. And as you can see, you can do these pretty simple, and you can do these in one fell swoop as well. So I'm kind of showing you some shortcuts here. And there's my sales units for a given day. Again, we'll make this for the entire year, or year to date, I should say. So, and then we'll get more data. And we'll make this last year. So there we have this year and last year's sales units. So now we can go ahead and take that price and we'll multiply that against our year-to-date units. So I'm going to put that right next to it. So we'll have that, and we are going to go grab that attribute or list price. We're going to multiply that. That would be an asterisk, and we'll use our units for year-to-date. Right, and we are going to give it a dollar sign to that. And we'll call it list price, list sales, list price sales. And there it is. And then I can take last year's units and make that sales amount for this year. So now we can kind of gauge to see where we're at in terms of list price versus what the actual sales was. And if we change our variance column to do the variance between those two, we'll have ourselves a discount amount. So we'll do list price minus sales, and we will call it discount amount. And there's our discount amount. And so I'm going to right click that and I'm going to sort that. And we can see some of the bigger discounts that we're doing by product. So just, by adding the right measures to your view, by having the appropriate attribute that you want to do the calculation against, then you can really start using these attributes into your analysis. As you can see, I am using that list price into my to calculate my list price sales. So, and again, if we take a look at that, it's pretty simple. We're just grabbing that attribute and field, whatever you want to call it, the column, just try not to overthink it, and then use that asterisk to do the necessary multiplication against any measure that you want. In this case, the units make sense, right? To do the dollars against the units to go ahead and extend that amount because that's per unit or per product, $107 per product, right? That's for a pallet, I know that'd be a pretty expensive meatloaf if it was $100 for just a meatloaf, but nevertheless. So again, that's those are the calculations I wanted to kind of run through and show you today. I wanted to show you some practical methods that you would probably use in a business environment. I wanted to also expose to you how to build one, just the simple steps of building a variance and using some of the functions that we use to do the count. You saw some of the more advanced things that you could do, like ranking. Feel free we'll be uploading this to YouTube, so check it out. If you want to review some of the things that you saw today, there'll be a YouTube video up on our channel. So make sure you check that out as well.